me one thing?
Say it, baby. Just say it.
I'm staring at rock legend Bruce Dickinson.
The cock and walk, baby.
And if Bruce Dickinson wants more cowbell, we should probably give him more cowbell.
Say it, baby.
And Bobby, you are right. I am being selfish. But the last time I checked, we don't have a whole lot of songs that feature the cowbell.
I gotta have more cowbell, baby.
I'd be doing myself a disservice and every member of this band if I didn't perform the out of this.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is more cowbell.
Thank you, Bruce.
All righty, good morning to you. It's 5 minutes after 9 o'clock, and this is 93.1 and the Mighty 1190. We're glad you're with us. We appreciate all of you tuning in today and joining us. We've got Dennis Joyner with us today. He is the Director of Public Health here in Union County, and we wanted to bring him in and see, is it true if we can find an egg from a dinosaur and extract the DNA and put it in a frog, can we make dinosaurs?
It's amazing what science can do, but I'm not going to go there on that one. Thank you.
No, actually, about a month and a half ago, we were doing a talk show here and it was talking about this vaping phenomenon that's going on now and how it exploded and how many people are doing it. And just trying to say, do we really know what's in it? And then not long after that, we started hearing these stories about, I think they call it popcorn lung, and people getting really sick and people dying. And it's like all of a sudden now the public's had an epiphany like, hey, we don't know what's in this stuff. Well, why do we not know?
If you've ever smoked, were you ever a smoker?
I've never been a smoker. I tried a few times, and thank the good Lord, it didn't take for me.
If you thought about trying to kick a smoking habit, of course you're not alone. 7 out of 10 smokers say they want to stop. Quitting smoking is one of the best things you can do for your health, and it's one of the most difficult things. Now, you may be tempted to turn to e-cigarettes as a way to ease the transition from traditional cigarettes to not smoking at all, but is smoking an e-cigarette, also called vaping, better for you than using a tobacco product? Can they help you to stop smoking once and for all? So we brought you in to talk about that because we're hearing some horror stories about it. And I see a lot of people doing it. Seems to be really popular.
It is.
Is it a way for some of these people to smoke inside? I see people smoking inside.
Well, it's
vaping inside.
Yeah, it's become exceedingly popular. It's grown dramatically over the last several years, and actually, it often is touted as sort of the safe way to smoke. And that's a little bit of a misnomer, because if you look at the different products or the different ingredients that are in a lot of the e-cigs, for example, Juuls, which are sort of a common faddish. It's the one you can buy at convenience stores. It's out there. It's small. It looks like a USB port. And you see a lot of folks using it. It actually, each one of those pods that has the juice in it contains the same amount of nicotine as a pack of cigarettes. Mm-hmm. One of the challenges is when you're smoking a cigarette, you reach the end of that cigarette, and either you got to decide to stop or light another one up. With these Juuls or these vape devices, there's nothing that stops you. You keep going until the juice runs out, and so it's very difficult to know what.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that the e-cigarettes heat the nicotine, the flavorings and other chemicals to create a water vapor, which you inhale. Regular tobacco contains about 7,000 chemicals, many of which are toxic. We know that. While we don't know exactly what chemicals are in the e-cigarettes, which is kind of scary, there's almost no doubt that they expose you to fewer toxic chemicals than a traditional cigarettes. That don't mean they're safe.
That's exactly right. And I think, if you look at what the recommendations are from the CDC and other experts in the field, the recommendation is that really folks should not be using e-cigarettes for their health. And the only folks really that has potentially some benefit possibly is someone who is a smoker, currently a smoker. The data does indicate that there may be some less risk, but I want to preface that by saying that's a very finite group of people that they're saying it could reduce some risk.
Well, the
There's
problem,
a lot of unknowns about it.
the problem is this: we're in the marketing business, and I don't care what anybody says. When all this first started, it was marketed as an e-cigarette to help people stop smoking. That's how it was marketed. 2 years after that, it was marketed as vaping. 6 months after that, there were multiple flavors you could get, and before you knew it, there were Dukes of Hazzard vape machines, there were Hello Kitty vape machines, there were strawberry lemonade and blueberry flavors, and there are 14 and 15-year-old kids that are doing this, and I'm not their parent, so I'm not questioning, but it seems to me like parents don't view this the same. They say, oh, it's just vaping. I'm like, yeah, but you don't know what's in it.
Right.
Listen, both e-cigarettes and regular cigarettes contain nicotine. Research suggests may be as addictive as heroin or cocaine. What's worse is many of the e-cigarette users get even more nicotine than they would from a tobacco product. People don't realize that because you can buy extra strength cartridges, which have a higher concentration of nicotine. So they're just as addictive as a traditional cigarette.
Yes, and I think that's one of the danger signs is that it's not, there's no control really in terms of what you're actually getting. You can have really high levels of these either the nicotine or the other substances, as you've mentioned earlier, which we really don't know. I mean, when you look at, a lot of testing that's been done on the chemicals that are in the vapor, it does go in to your lungs, and a lot of those chemicals are carcinogenic, creates other health effects, and so that's one of the biggest drawbacks is we don't know, and it's not.
Do you have to be 18 to buy them? Because there's a lot of 14-year-olds smoking them.
You do have to. I think you do have to be 18 to buy.
Are supposed to be, yeah.
But
I think the problem is you're going to have folks about getting it from friends and other people, and so many of them are, as I mentioned earlier, they're very small, they're very easy to conceal.
Yeah, sure.
And it is there's been research that has shown that actually, if you are vaping, many times vaping for teens actually does, in many cases, lead them to then try to experiment.
Well, here's the
cigarettes.
deal. Is what parents need to understand. Now, these e-cigarettes have been marketed as an aid to help you quit smoking. E-cigarettes have not received FDA approval as a smoking cessation device. A recent study found that most people who intended to use the e-cigarettes to kick the habit ended up continuing to smoke both.
Right.
You smoke the vape when you're inside and can't smoke the cigarette. That's how a lot of people are doing it. These
right.
companies, you take Juul, you take Blue. These are tobacco companies in a lot of cases that are the parent companies of these devices. They're finding a way to make revenue that they lost when the crackdown happened on cigarettes. My issue with it has always been, I don't care that it exists, and I don't care that people do it. And if there's anybody out there that can do that and wean themselves off smoking, that's great. My problem is I don't understand the flavors and the obviously marketed to kids aspect of it. That's what bothers me.
No, I agree, and it's the hook, unfortunately, from a public health standpoint, that starts a trend and a pattern that is not very positive, and that's the concern that I have.
Now, I had a story last week that they had one of the big problems. You're starting to see these stories about something called popcorn lung,
Right.
making people sick. Well, there are, for lack of a better way of putting it, there's a black market for this stuff, and that black market is, instead of nicotine-based products, it's THC-based products, which is the psychedelic part of marijuana. Now, from a law enforcement perspective, it's nearly impossible to determine. If you pull someone over and they say, oh, I'm vaping, well, if you don't know what's in the nicotine product that you're buying at the convenience store that's made by the big company, imagine what somebody's making in their apartment and,
Right.
and selling. And mom and dad wouldn't know either.
Right. No, you're exactly right. And really, that's what's gotten all of the attention here recently. As of October 1st, there's been over 1,080 confirmed or probable cases of lung injury nationally, and in 48 different states, including North Carolina has had 42 cases of lung injury associated with
Really?
vaping. And as of October 1st, too, there's been 19 deaths associated with this lung illness, and that's been confirmed in 16 states. So,
are they buying an inferior vaping product, or?
Well, one of the things that they have been seeing, the research and the investigation is still ongoing, but they are seeing a link to, as you mentioned earlier, the THC. There's in all of these cases, some commonalities are that they were vaping or using e-cigarettes, and in many of those cases, THC was associated. So the CDC and others are reluctant to just solely say it's only that, because it could be other contributing factors, but that clearly is a link. But the concern is, if this is, now we've reached this point where this device can be used, depending on what's in it, to actually do things that's really cool.
Yeah, the genie's out of the bottle now. I mean, it's and the thing is, the FDA sadly has got to play catch up to all this now, when there probably should have been a little more proactive in the beginning. But I don't think they expected it to explode the way that it did, because some people would argue, well, what's the difference in that and the nicotine gum? People buy nicotine gum, they chew it, they try to wean themselves off. Couldn't you just chew 6 pieces? Of course you could, but I don't think kids ever went for the nicotine gum, and that's the problem.
Right, exactly. And for the nicotine gum, you know what's in it.
It tells you
and
on
it's
the
controlled.
side.
Yeah, it's controlled, and that's monitored. With this stuff, it's not.
Well, and for people that don't know about the e-cigarettes, I mean, it's a battery-operated device. It can look like a real cigarette or a pen, and some have refillable tanks that look a little different. There are literally hundreds of brands of these things, and they're sometimes marketed as a way to get your nicotine fix without the danger of a cigarette, but that's misleading at best. They all work the same basic way. They have containers filled with a liquid that's usually made of nicotine, some flavorings, and other chemicals. A heating device turns the liquid into vapor that you inhale when you take a drag on it. Most contained the chemical nicotine, which is addictive. When you stop using it, you can go into withdrawal and feel depressed and crabby. Nicotine isn't good for people with a heart problem. After some initial research shows it may hurt your arteries. It can also harm the developing brains of kids, could affect memory and attention, damage unborn babies. Pregnant women shouldn't use anything with nicotine. This is not a safe alternative to nicotine.
No.
Well, it is nicotine. It is not a safe alternative to cigarettes.
Cigarettes, yes. That's how I should have put it.
But the
some brands have formaldehyde in them.
Yes.
Will they? Are they now trying to get a handle on it, as you know of?
Yes, it is a huge effort now is really come to light, and unfortunately it's been somewhat after the fact of some of these deaths and other health complications has occurred, but there really needs to be some better control and regulation and understanding what's in the product, and so that can be sort of monitored, because right now that's not the case, and unfortunately many out there unsuspectingly, many of them are children that have now access to them. And one of the take-home messages we want to drive home is that for parents to have these kind of discussions with their kids and express to them the concerns and the dangers of it, and also to be aware of what their children may be doing, because that USB port that it looks like they have with their computer may actually not be a USB port.
Well, just so you know, just so people know, I'm looking. Here's and I'm not gonna tell you what it is, but here's a website where you can buy all this stuff. All right, and if you're wondering, they have, let's see, strawberry, lemonade, mixed berry, mint, honey, almond, apple pie, apricot, butterscotch, cake, cantaloupe, chocolate, churros, cinnamon, coffee, cotton candy, cream, donut, dragon fruit, custard, funnel cake, gummy bears, key lime, honeydew, mango. There are 204 flavors on this tropical fruit, sugar, sour, vanilla, watermelon, whipped cream, wintergreen, Greek yogurt, all flavors that you can get.
Well, and critics fear that vaping with all these wonderful flavors are going to get kids hooked on nicotine, and that they'll graduate to cigarettes when they want a bigger kick.
Well, I just had a lady send me a text saying, I've got a grandson who did just that. He started vaping, and before you know it, he's buying cigarettes.
A study in 2016 in Pediatrics magazine found that teens that never smoked but used e-cigarettes were 6 times more likely to try cigarettes compared to kids who don't vape.
Exactly, and that's a huge issue right there, because I think it really becomes sort of that segue, unfortunately, to
Here's a
cigarette use.
Bubble gum flavor. Yeah, that's marketed to grown-ups.
Yeah.
Bubble gum. There's Red Hots.
They make a lobster flavor. I may have to.
There's bourbon. Bourbon flavor. No.
Far from safe.
Oh yes, it is, and I think that if you, it's unfortunately it's reached a point where, because of this lung injury, that it reached the point of death in many instances associated with its use. And one of the things we want folks to also do from a health department standpoint is we are participating in the investigation to assist the state and the CDC. If folks have used vaping products and have fever, cough, shortness of breath, chest pain, abdominal pain, or nausea, they do need to seek attention from their physician, because it could be that there may be an association.
So in other words, if you're vaping and you seem sick and don't know why, you probably ought to tell the doctor I'm vaping when you go.
Exactly. And one of the things we're going to be doing too is we'll be helping the state division of public health with the investigation in terms of following up with questionnaires with patients and monitoring that information that we're able to receive locally, and possibly even getting the vaping devices or things that they might have been using so that they could be used to test and see what those common factors may be in part of the investigation.
I read up and tried to deduce what this popcorn lung is, and I guess from the best I can tell, it's literal bubbles inside the lung that they think may somehow be contributed to this. So,
right.
That's bad.
Right. Well, the different chemicals can irritate the lining of the lungs. The lungs are very sensitive. I mean, they're meant for very specific purposes, and so when you contaminate them with other chemicals that irritate, you create additional problems, and they don't work like they're supposed to. And we're at that point now where it seems that this is a heavy contributor to a big concern for us.
County Health Director Dennis Joyner is our guest. I don't want to start off change this topic for a next one, because the other one we need to take the full time, but we'd like to have you back on it and talk about CBD.
Yes.
It's confusing at best. Some people swear by it. I'm looking in the AARP magazine. Research is generally supports the use of cannabis and CBD to reduce MS symptoms, alleviate PTSD, ease seizures, lower anxiety, lessen cancer pain, ease chronic pain. But there's a lot of confusion about it. If you want to try it and you're hearing some good things about it, I wouldn't know where to begin as to where to get it and what strength, and am I being ripped off?
Well, the question is, are there any adverse effects from using CBD oil that anybody knows about yet, or does it seem to be what they're saying it is, good, if not good for you, at least not harming you?
Right. I think that's a fairly good way of characterizing it. The data right now and some of the research that's out there on it does seem to indicate that for some individuals under certain circumstances and illnesses, it may actually have some benefit.
But it's not hurting those to try it. Like if you try it, it's probably not going to make you sick or
right.
run in danger.
But I mean, here again, it's one of those things where we talk about an oil or something, an ointment or something that's to rub on you. It's a little different than when like THC or something where you're putting it in. It's a whole different environment, and you're inhaling.
No, that's
you're getting
exactly
that in your lungs. So it's how it gets introduced into the body is also part of the concern as well.
33 states have legalized cannabis to treat medical conditions. 11 have approved the recreational use of it, and more older Americans are using it. Not the.
There's a lot of older Americans that never stopped using it. They just come out of the closet now using it. I mean, you got that whole Vietnam generation. There's a lot of people that they've been smoking it the whole time.
You know, Dennis, people, not doing it just to get high. It's helping them sleep, and it's helping with pain, and a lot of different things.
Right.
They're not, and they're not. Not trying to characterize, but I mean, some people just take one or two puffs and not really enough to get high, but it's helping them sleep through the night and that kind of thing. It's hard to argue with success.
Well, and the issue with CBD is that it's the element of marijuana that is not the psychoactive aspect like THC is.
Yeah.
And so it is sort of a different derivative of the marijuana.
Well,
but there's some of the stuff out there that looks just like marijuana and it smells like and it's not. It's something else. How does law enforcement know what they're dealing with?
It's muddied the water.
Yeah,
Big time.
It's made it very, very difficult, and I think that's where
and aren't
the
people
management
vaping that as well?
They smoke it. No, you can buy the buds that don't have any THC in it. You roll it up and smoke it just like you would a joint.
Yeah.
And they give you a little paper saying this ain't marijuana. I'm like, well, I just copied the paper if I wanted to ride around with marijuana.
But it's got to be difficult for law enforcement, right?
Yes, no, it is, and I think and unfortunately, it's a moving picture.
Of course,
in terms of how they're able to intervene and what is and what isn't. And I think, quite honestly, just from a public health standpoint, I mean, we all don't want to be over-regulated on anything.
No.
But if it's stuff that actually has harm, then we need to understand what it is and manage it in a controlled environment.
I, for one, am happy that there have been some states that have legalized it medicinally. I don't use marijuana. It's not something I enjoy at all, but I know a lot of people do. I'm happy just from the perspective that now maybe we'll study it. If there is any health benefit to it, if there is something good in it, let's find out and see. Because I'm telling you now, it's as easy to get as a pack of cigarettes. People are gonna smoke it. They're gonna smoke it.
Yeah.
As far as the CBD goes, I know people who use it and swear by it. I tried it. I took 2 bottles of it because I take anxiety medicine, and it didn't seem to do much for me. But for a lot of people,
your mileage may vary. Well, Dennis, we appreciate it. As our county health director, are you excited about the return of the McRib sandwich?
Yes.
Well,
and do you know what's in it?
Yeah, that's exactly what we need. Is one more fast food item.
Yeah, that's always a good question. Are you excited about? No, listen, we're coming up on, and I know we've covered a lot here, but we covered vaping pretty good. It's worth mentioning this. We are now starting flu season. All right, and if you are at all prone to it, elderly, young, really for anybody, it's time to get your flu shot in, and it's time to do that.
Yes, it is, and that's a good segue into one of the next preventive things you can do. Flu season is coming around. We're going to start seeing that. Usually, it can start early in the winter. Typically, you see it in January, February. You're hot. Typically your hottest years, but it can occur anytime. And so flu vaccine is now out there, and we encourage folks to do it. It's the number one thing you can do to prevent
I know,
the flu.
and I know you're tired of answering this question because the flu shot is a dead virus. So what do you say to the people who get the flu shot and then they get sick? And it's happened to me, and not really full-blown flu, but I just kind of puny for a couple days. What's happening there? Because it is a dead virus.
Yes, I think it's, you hear that it's going to give me the flu.
Yeah.
And that is, it's not possible for that to happen. What can occur in some cases is there is a window of about 2 weeks before someone actually develops and seroconverts to get protection from the flu vaccine, for the shot to work. So in some cases, it could be that the person had already started getting the flu, or may have had some exposure.
Or it might not be the flu at all.
And
it might just, I got the flu shot, now I think I got the flu. It may be a cold.
And we all self-assess ourselves. And I mean, many of us have had situations where, I've got the flu, when maybe it was just it was just some bad symptoms,
Yeah.
but not totally the flu. So
Yeah,
it
'cause,
still is the number one best way to reduce the risk of
if
flu.
you get the flu shot and you I don't feel that good today, that isn't flu. You'll know if you got
Oh, yeah.
You know,
If you get flu, you'll know it.
I remember a doctor would tell me one time. I had this conversation with him, and he said, "You know how you'll know when you got the flu?" I said, "How?" He said, "You'll want to die."
Yeah, it
Quite
can
the
be.
difference in feeling puny and having the full blown flu.
Yeah, it is a rough illness. It really is.
You know, we're fortunate in the sense that I read up on this one time. We happen to be on the side of the world that gets the flu the second time. You know, it moves
Right,
around the world.
right.
So we have the luxury of knowing, or at least having an educated guess at what those strains are
Right.
going to be, and that's how they develop the vaccine before they ever give it to you. And you know, every once in a while there'll be a year where they get it wrong, and it'll be a strain, and you'll see a lot more people with
Right.
with the flu. But it's absolutely one of the cheapest things a person can do to ensure. You know,
Oh yeah, and you can get the shot anywhere. If you don't have a
Oh, yeah.
regular doctor,
Yeah.
go in the drugstore.
Yeah.
you
I
might
mean,
could get a
it's
vape. You might could even get a vape flu shot. I don't know.
Yeah, you can go ahead and walk past the vape stand.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, but no, it's. I appreciate you bringing it up because it's very timely, and I agree. It's. And the other thing is, you're doing it for yourself, yes, but also if you have, elderly relatives or you've got small
right.
kids, if you can protect them, sometimes those folks may not. They may not develop some protection from a flu shot. I mean, they should get it too, but we create this herd effect, and in many ways, we protect each other by some of these activities that we do. So it's important.
And like for us and many other businesses like ours, where you have a small office environment, man, one person gets it, and without having protection against it, we're going to pass it around to everybody.
Here at the radio station, we use the school rule: if you're sick, don't come. That's which is a lot of places they expect you to be there, but here there's not enough of us to be able to do that.
I was going to say 1 day versus a week and a half, 2 weeks.
That's
Big
exactly
difference.
right.
Sure is.
One final thing, and we are out of time, so the 30-second answer. And I only ask you because I've had it brought up to me a couple of times on the talk show. There's a tiny bit. How concerned at all should people be about this Legionnaire's disease that seems to be floating around North Carolina now? And we talked about where it came from and how people got it. Should we be concerned at all?
Well, I think it's what we know right now. It was pretty isolated to the particular event with the Mountain State Fair up in Fletcher, and the time period in which it appears the exposure had occurred was at that location. That is, the fair's over there now, and so I think for the most part, folks out here are, we're okay in terms of that particular exposure. Legionnaires is it's airborne, but you have to have the virus in an environment where it's breeding and it can grow and it can spread. And so, unfortunately, these situations pop up. It points home the importance of us, being mindful of monitoring things, and that's why sometimes inspection of locations are important for us. So, but I think for the most part, we should be good.
Well, listen, man, we appreciate you coming in and talking to us. We'll do this again sometime, and come up with all kind of other stuff people scared of, and see whether or not they should be.
Be happy to come back. Thank you so much.
That was fun. Thank you, Dennis. We appreciate that. All right, take a break.